Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album from Perfume Genius called Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. Oh, I was looking forward to this one, because I can make the argument that Mike Hadrius, aka Perfume Genius, has been one of the most distinctive and potent indie and Baroque pop artists working today, blending in stunning fragility with a coursing raw undercurrent that gave the distinctly queer beauty a striking foundation. And so his writing has always felt so distinctive, primal and raw, and openly sexual in a way that dares you confront it, but coax through language so deft and poetic that you couldn't help but be entranced by it. And that's before you dug a little bit deeper and untangled the multitudes of emotion beneath him that more often than not actually brought hooks along for the ride. And as such, between Put Your Back Into It, Too Bright, and No Shape, he's made some of the best albums in the 2010s. And if anything, he's only been getting better. So you better believe that even despite some early singles implying this might be his softest and most conventionally accessible project to date, especially following the grand high drama of No Shape, I was incredibly excited for this. We've seen an artist grow and mature into a distinctive and potent voice, and Blake Mills was still on production, and I was intrigued by his language suggesting he was looking beyond himself more on this album, which would open up a lot of more vantage points to his unique voice and framing, and thus with all the mountains of critical acclaim pouring in, yet again, what did we get on Set My Heart on Fire Immediately? Well, here's the thing. This was one of those albums I was convinced for a while it was great, but would just wind up back on the pulse. Not every excellent album is going to give me enough to have a full review, after all, especially when it's a lesser-known indie project, and it might seem like Perfume Genius's formula is becoming well known to those in the know. But then I started digging into the crannies and the odd pockets of this album, and I realized I had a lot more to say, because not only does it grow on me with every single listen, this is more of a departure for Perfume Genius than I think is being acknowledged, both in the sound and the content. I will say, right out of the gate, I don't think it's better than No Shape, Wreath, Just Like Love, Other Side. Those approached a glorious, opulent explosion that this project doesn't even attempt. But paradoxically, I think this might be the easiest project for me to go back to from him. And it's also by far his most accessible. Now, accessibility, that can be tough to quantify with a character like Mike Hadrius. His unique warble bends and quivers from a hushed, near guttural lower register to a very breathy falsetto. And while his voice isn't quite quaking with emotion like on previous projects, that emotive intensity, it's not gone anywhere. Like always, he is the star of every Perfume Genius project. But there's something a little different about how he carries himself here. And I'm not sure I can just call it newfound confidence. He's always been willing to bull-facedly confront those who are thrown off by him, force them to see his intensity, but this album doesn't feel as directly confrontational. His presence is more self-assured and poised. Some of those raw edges have been tempered, and that definitely extends to the sonic palette he uses, drawing a little less on grand classical romanticism supported by ragged, pulsating electronic grooves, and maybe moving up a couple decades to slightly more contemporary Baroque pop. I mean, think the early to mid-60s, reinforced by how Hadrius has outright referenced Roy Orbison, and I can hear it. And there's a smattering of that very early rock or even twinges of country underpinning some of these songs. Sizzling guitars and bass lines, a little bit more live drum work beneath the strings and keys. And that softens some of that juxtaposition, or at least shifts it to tones that a broader critical audience might find more familiar. Hell, a song like On the Floor, it might as well sound like Borns' Electric Love Part 2 with a quicker groove and the echo of backing vocals and that stunner of a bridge. And of course, I intend all that as a compliment, but it could well be considered a bit safer, as would the slow burn grind of Describe or Nothing at All with some of those subtle backing twinkles, or that cute little gallop behind Without You, or the dramatic strings splashing off the patter of the groove on Your Body Changes Everything that just nails the sensual push-pull of sex. And since Hadrius is so damn good at these sort of ballads, we get cuts like Just a Touch and One More Try, and the absolutely heartbreaking closer Borrowed Light off the harmonium. And then there's the cut that will actually nail the change-up mid-song on Some Dream. But it is still recognizably Perfume Genius. So once I became accustomed to a more tasteful form of reference, the songs, they worked as well as ever. Where even the usual suspects in the songs I liked a little less, they fell out. Like the more abstract, guttural, but weirdly tender Leave, or the more spare swells around Moonbend. And you know what? If I'm gonna nitpick a bit, I will always say that I prefer Hadrius in his mid-range and not always the falsetto. But again, more hit and miss where it actually works. That's all. But then I started thinking, why go for a sound that might feel like a departure, or even the first tentative step towards normality, as much as we could get it from him? Well, this is where we have to go to the content, which again, might show him at his most direct ever. And as established early, the opening track has him finding an odd sort of comfort in realizing half his life might well be over, because it doesn't seem to faze him. Describe has him hitting a form of depressing rock bottom, but he's still seeking descriptions of beauty to pull himself out. The anticipation of the crushed throat on the floor is joyous, it's never seriously undercut. And even if his relationship on Nothing at All is fraught with real conflict, it all seems just to bounce off of him. His love is that profound. Even his feelings of body dysmorphia, which basically underpin the entire arc of No Shape, in a fleeting moment on Without You, he catches a glimpse of himself in the mirror that actually shows him as he is. And it's such a stabilizing moment of the hope that had me waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it didn't happen. You know what? Even some of the sex songs have changed. Yeah, you get the primal ecstasy of Leave and the rolling tension of Your Body Changes Everything, but there's a little bit more poise and security here. They don't feel as racked by pain or deeper angst. And more importantly, they don't feel like they have to. This comes most to the forefront on Jason, where he sings about a one-night stand that he had with a straight guy who is very clearly going through a very complicated struggle with his own sexuality, and Hadrius is the one who has to walk away, a little bit hurt as he swipes a $20 bill from Jason's jeans, but a sense that this is not traumatic for him. He's the second character in the story, and he can walk away. And yet I have to stress how different this feels compared to previous albums. There's a sense of contentedness and resolve to the writing and scenes where Fragile isn't overwhelming everything, where there could be a sense of normalcy in his storytelling and where the drama is more outside of himself. And you can tell he's a bit surprised by it, but the follow-through is the question, why isn't this just the norm? The two songs Just a Touch and One More Try are centered on queer lovers fighting in world wars where they had to still conceal their connections. And yet when one partner doesn't come back, One More Try asks the question, if they were doomed anyway, why hide anything? It can be normal. Why not normalize their love? Well, this is where Hadrius' angst does return a little for the final two songs. The first being Some Dream, where he wonders if cloistered in making art, he's losing his opportunity to have some of those real experiences. Imagining a world where he goes outside and everyone is gone, and did he really just throw away all those possibilities for music, for art, for a song? And then Borrowed Time, it returns to the same question as the opener. What if it was all for naught? What if none of it really mattered? What if there wasn't a point to finding any sense of truth in art at all as the river of time returns to the sea yet again? A completely coincidental parallel to that last Jason Isbell album I reviewed, and yet another comes with this resolution. Slides his hand into that of his partner, and is peacefully resigned to whatever might come in that undertow, where he can accept the normalcy and security in his partner as maybe the thing that makes it better. I mean, it's fascinating how both albums expose vulnerabilities and accept companionship to ride out the tide, but where Isbell framed it as a necessity and looking at the much bigger, much more fraught picture, Mike Hadrius can finally look through a smaller, more intimate window and is able to exhale after years of fighting, and allowing himself to normalize that framing gives the album its heart. I really like that. And yeah, second standalone review in a row, but this album is wonderful yet again. Again, I think the highest moments of No Shape keep it at the top in my books, but this is an extremely close second. And to be honest, I'm thrilled that Perfume Genius was able to just sidestep just trying to outdo his excess, with a thematic pivot that's mirrored by the production and showing real growth as an artist. This is beautiful stuff, folks. And even beyond me just giving this a 9 out of 10, if you're looking for the easiest possible jump on point for Perfume Genius, it's probably this. Please, folks, take the time, understand what this actually is and what it might represent, especially for him. Check it out. You'll get a lot out of it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, I know I'm doing 2 standalone reviews in a row, but when you get this much fantastic music, you gotta highlight it, you gotta center it. On the Pulse is probably gonna be coming tomorrow. I'm gonna be working on editing and getting that filmed out as quickly as I can. I've already drafted the majority of it, we'll see what happens. But hey, beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you guys got your comments, leave them down there below. And hey, if you guys want to contribute to my schedule, or hey, what I understand at this time it might be tough to contribute, but link to my Patreon is right over there. You guys want to get involved? Happy to have you. Beyond that, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.